Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm the GCSE science teacher. In today's video, we're going to be learning about GCSE biology content, specifically selective breeding. I hope you guys find this video helpful. And of course, Happy New Year to you all. I hope you're having a fantastic start to 2025. And if you've stumbled across this video, perhaps your New Year's resolution is to do more revision, you have come to the right place. I'm a real life science teacher. I teach biology, chemistry, and physics, and I've made these videos specifically for students like yourself who want to improve their grades. So if you enjoy this content, you'd like to see more of this, feel free to thumbs it up, share it with someone else, and please do subscribe as well. Join our wonderful community. We all love science here, so you'd be very welcome. And yeah, thank you so much for your support. Let's get started. Let's first of all start off with this idea of why selective breeding is even done in the first place. Well, it's a process that involves breeding plants or animals for a specifically desired trait. And those traits are characteristics. Perhaps it's the milk yield, perhaps it's the muscle mass, it could be the color of petals, the scent of flowers. Essentially, why we're doing this is to increase the prevalence of these phenotypes in that specific species. And this can be used for economical reasons. This could be aesthetic reasons. It could even be to do with the temperament of individual organisms as well. So if you think about domestic dogs, they often have a very kind, calm temperament, but they originated from wolves. So very wild animals, if you will. So very much over time, this process of selective breeding has been done to allow humans to manipulate the genetics of certain organisms. And again, with that, there is obviously some risks involved, and I'll talk about those later, but as well there's definitely an ethical consideration as well. Some people are very much opposed to this process and think that it's kind of messing around with the genetics of an organism. It can also lead to disease as well, because the gene pool of a specific organism is reduced, so that can encourage rare conditions, especially in dogs, which we see quite a lot of the time in pedigree animals. But a lot of the time it can be really beneficial and very useful, especially in agriculture, especially in farming as well. And also it can be particularly cool when you see things like candy floss grapes that are created. So we have a variety of grapes now based on the fact that we've had two different varieties of grapes previously. One called the Concord grape, which was very flavorful, very fragrant, and smelled very sweet. However, it was not very palatable, wasn't particularly nice to eat. Scientists have bred this grape variety with a much more palatable seedless type of grape and created what we now know as candy floss grapes, or cotton candy grapes. And this has been done loads of times in other types of fruits and vegetables as well. So if you look at things like the original shape and size of a watermelon or a carrot, or loads of other fruits and vegetables, I'll actually put some information in the description box, because I wish I could show you this, but because of copyright reasons, I can't post pictures of this. It's just literally what fruit and vegetables used to look like before we used selective breeding to encourage what they essentially look like now. I'll leave a link in the description box for you guys, because it looks amazing. I always show this to students when I teach this. So feel free to have a look in the description box for that. But we also have things like hybrids that can also occur from this. Now, remember that a species and a hybrid are not quite the same thing, and it's worth knowing the difference. Remember that a species is an organism or a group of organisms that can interbreed and have fertile offspring. However, hybrids, they are essentially created from two species that have come together that are very similar in their genetics, but the hybrid itself can't actually procreate. It is infertile. And this can be as a result of things like selective breeding. So cherums are an example. This is where you have a cherry and a plum that have been genetically created to create this new organism, this new thing, this new fruit, if you will. We have pluots like plums and apricots. We've got peacherines, peaches and nectarines. So they've been selectively bred together, but they've resulted in a hybrid. So we can't get, say, a peacherine tree, right? It would just be the peacherine fruit that's grown, and then it wouldn't be able to create any more of these as a variety in their own right. So sometimes selective breeding doesn't always work in that regard, but for the most part it does, and it can lead to a higher increase in that particular phenotype over many generations. So let me give you some examples now. So some key examples of selective breeding include plants that produce lots of grain, or larger or more unusual or very popular flowers are often one of the examples that you could give at GCSE. Plants also, specifically ones that are disease resistant or are able to have high crop yields. These are other examples of why people may use selective breeding in the agricultural industry. Another example is seedless grapes. Those have been selectively bred as a variety to ensure that they do not have seeds, just because of the palatable nature of them. And then, of course, we have animals. So animals are often selectively bred for things like desired characteristics or temperament. So domestic dogs, domestic cats, these all are specific breeds, and this is because of the selective breeding process. So Dalmatians versus a Chihuahua. Although they're the same species, they're both dogs, for example, they are different breeds because they have different desirable characteristics that specific humans have chosen to be prevalent in their gene pool. And it's the same as in the case of farming as well. So farm animals like cows and sheep and chickens as well. These have been all selectively bred for either meat yield or large egg size, and things like this to ensure that the farmer makes money from that particular animal. Now, it's really important to mention here, of course, there are lots of ethical considerations with selective breeding or artificial selection. And it's something worth mentioning because a lot of the time we teach the facts, but of course there is the ethical concerns too. So I wanted to make that point as well. And now I'm going to share with you the key steps in how this process happens. And this is one of the exam questions you could get asked to describe. So, how does this actually happen? Well, the first thing that needs to happen is the individual, the human, needs to identify a chosen characteristic or a trait in the parents of the species they're looking at. So, let's go with cattle. We have a bull and a cow, and they both have, let's say, large muscle mass. Okay. The second thing that happens is these individuals will breed together and produce offspring. Now, of course, all the offspring that are produced by these individuals may have a lot of variation within them. So one of them's bigger, one of them smaller, some of them have different fur, etc., etc. But only the ones that have the specific desirable characteristic that the farmer wants will be then selected again and bred together to produce another offspring and the next generation that forms. And this process is repeated over and over and over again until the generations have been produced and the desirable trait is expressed. So, some of the benefits of doing this is, of course, the organism that is produced has the desirable characteristics that you want. This could be beneficial in terms of finances, this could be beneficial in terms of better quality of food, etc. And remember, this doesn't just happen to animals, this also happens to plants as well. But also, any animals like domestic animals, cats and dogs, for example, they may be selectively bred for their behavior, so their temperament. Are they, are they friendly animals? Are they good around children, etc.? This is one of those reasons why selective breeding is done, because if you think about dogs, for example, they all descend from wolves, which were wild animals at one point. And selective breeding or artificial selection has encouraged new breeds of dog to be around humans and us to coexist with them. So there are some benefits to this process as well. And I briefly alluded to this, but there are risks, of course, with this process. So, some of the biggest risks are that there is a reduction in genetic variation that can lead to specific problems with disease or problems with insects, especially with plants. If you have too little variation, a lot of the organisms that are in that species can be too closely related. So, you end up with almost a monoculture where if one disease infects one of those plants, all of them get infected with the same disease. And it's the same with animals as well. So, there is an increase in disease risk. Also, rare diseases that are often inherited by a recessive gene or a recessive allele. These can often be increased in prevalence with organisms that have been selectively bred, and this can actually cause inadvertently a lot of problems too. And this is the case with a lot of dogs, unfortunately. So, for example, Dalmatians are often deaf, and some dogs that are much larger will often have hip problems as well. But we can also, as well, another risk is that it can create physical problems in specific organisms as well. So, not just dogs, for example, but in other animals as well. And this can, of course, be morally wrong. And that's it from me today. I've been the GCSE science teacher and you have been curious. Thank you so much for your time. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, share the video, and do subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like more videos from me, please do click on the playlist now. You can see those on this side over here. I also have Instagram and TikTok, which I post on, not as often as YouTube, I will admit, but if you would like some shorter videos or content about GCSE biology, chemistry, and physics, feel free to check those out as well. In the meantime, have a great day and I'll catch you in the next one.